Now, let me start with this in this hour. This is an interesting story. We've been talking about sexual harassment for a long time now. It dominated the news towards the end of last year, and it would appear it's not going away. I'm talking about sexual harassment. It's something that for a long time we've heard women saying, we don't want to be subjected to unwanted sexual advances from men. It's got to stop. This was all started, of course, with the Harvey Weinstein affair and all the stuff from Hollywood, but this has now trickled down through society. We've got women in all lines of work who are saying, me too. You know, I've been subjected to an unwanted sexual advance from a man at work. It was disgusting. I didn't want it. Men need to stop doing this. Well, now, women in France say they're standing up for the rights of men to hit on women, in the hope of tempting them for a drink, for a meal, a dance, or even sex. They're saying that men must have a human right to try and seduce women. This is an open letter that's been written to Le Monde, one of the French national papers. Over 100 prominent French women have signed this letter. It was kind of started by Catherine Deneuve, who's an Oscar-nominated actress. And she says that it's disgusting that men have been punished and forced out of their jobs when all they tried to do was touch someone's knee or steal a kiss. The letter says that rape is a crime, but trying to seduce someone, even persistently or clumsily, that's not a crime. Well, I want your calls this morning. Maybe you agree that men should be free to try and chat women up as part of their sexual freedom. Maybe you think this backlash against men has gone too far. Maybe you would never have got with your partner unless he tried to chat you up. Or to use the language of this letter, he tried to hit on you. Or maybe you quite frankly, you hate having men come on to you. And you think it would be much better, actually, if we lived in a world where men only came on to women if women made it absolutely clear that's what they wanted. Unequivocally, if a woman shows a huge amount of interest in a man, then maybe he's got the green light to give it a go. But until that point, he should just keep his mouth shut and wait to be approached. And if you're one of my male listeners this morning, have you ever tried to hit on a woman? How did it go? Maybe you got with your partner and your wife because you tried to chat her up. You tried to seduce her. 03459 455 555. What's your reaction to this French campaign that says men have the right to hit on women? Natoya Raymond is from Women Against Feminism. Women Against Feminism, I'll say it again, and a collective of women known as the Liberty Bells. She joins me now. Morning to you, Natoya.
Oh, good morning. Thank you for having me on.
I think you better explain the concept first of Women Against Feminism. Very briefly, what does that mean?
We are a group online. We have a prominent Facebook group, and it's quite a well-known brand. We have a few various blogs and websites. We disagree with feminism's foundational belief, which is patriarchy theory, which says that men have oppressed women throughout human history, and that's all kinds of feminism that believe that, even intersectional feminism.
Right, okay.
We disagree with that.
So taking that as a basis, what's your reaction to this open letter saying that men have the right to try and seduce women, no matter how clumsily they do it, no matter if the woman on the receiving end isn't particularly interested?
I am ecstatic that someone such as Catherine and these 100 women in France have decided to put themselves out there and put themselves at risk of attack from feminists and other progressive individuals. It's about time that people of this status started speaking out, because I find when I have just general conversations with everyday women who are not particularly overly feminist or not, most of them think that the Me Too phenomena is an overreaction, and most of them like it when men approach them, especially if they fancy the man or they've been making moves to make sure that he notices them. So,
but isn't that the key difference here? And this is something that was raised last year. I think it was Julia Hartley-Brewer, I think the columnist who many people will know from, I think, various papers.
Yes, I know about that story.
She said, just for anyone that's just listening who's not aware of this, she said that it would appear to be the fact that if a woman is approached by a man she fancies, then she sees it as flattery. And if a woman is approached by a man who's a bit older and she doesn't really fancy, then it's seen as harassment.
Yes, I completely agree with her. And the fact that, I can't remember the name of the guy who was given pressure to resign as a result of her talking about an experience that she had with him, where she said that he he crossed the boundary a little bit with her, and then now they're friends, and she forgave him for that behaviour. We have to remember that we were all teenagers once, we were young men and we were young women, and we had to learn how to interact with each other. So what we're doing now is we are punishing men for putting themselves out there, for becoming vulnerable when they're having an interaction with a woman. They're trying to learn all the signs, they're trying to learn how best to approach a woman, and they're not always going to get it right. You said earlier, you conflated unwanted sexual advance with harassment. Harassment is not an unwanted sexual advance. Harassment is when you tell someone no and they won't leave you alone. Now that can become a crime. And an unwanted sexual advance is not a crime. And actually in the UK, it can be deemed as such because we have a policy now called listen and believe. If a woman accuses a man of sexual assault or harassment, she's automatically deemed a victim. She can claim compensation from the CPS paid for by the taxpayer, even if it turns out she's a false accuser or the case never goes through.
So the point you're making is that this has gone too far in your eyes.
100%. We have, there's been numerous cases that have been dropped recently, with Liam Allen being a prominent one, where the police were reluctant to give evidence to show that the woman consented to a sexual
okay. If we stay off specific cases for now,
leading into demonising men and putting innocent men into prison for as Catherine said, for making perhaps a social faux pas.
Let me bring Aisha Ali-Khan into this conversation. Aisha writes the Women United blog. Keen to hear what she makes of what you said, Natoya. Morning to you, Aisha.
Morning. Hello.
What do you make of what Natoya said this morning on the programme?
I think Natoya's obviously responding to the letter that came out yesterday, and can I just basically put my views out there about the letter? I think it's an absolutely irresponsible letter. It's completely bonkers, and it's going to do nothing but give men, not all men, some men, the green light to either carry on doing what they want to do, i.e. sexually harassing women, or actually give a message to victims that whatever's happened to you, just shut up and put up with it. I think that the letter, for whatever reason they thought it was perfectly acceptable, it might be okay, perfectly acceptable to Catherine Deneuve and others who've signed the letter for a man to come and touch them without their permission and to try and kiss them and put his tongue down their throat. That's fine. But it's not acceptable to the majority of society, whether you're male or female, and this has to be called out for what it is. It's basically apologism for sexual harassment.
Natoya.
Yeah, do you want me to respond?
I do.
Okay. I think you've completely over-exaggerated what Catherine has said in the letter, because she has rightfully acknowledged the horrible crime of rape and sexual abuse. And what I mentioned before in this conversation was that you and the presenter, or other people in the metoo campaign, are conflating sexual harassment, serious sexual abuse and rape with an unwanted sexual advance or flirting or a social faux pas. When I was looking at the Me Too campaign, I did an off-the-cuff video where I examined a BBC article where a woman tweeted her experience from the Me Too, saying that a man took her for dinner, who was a work colleague, out of work hours, and said that he found her very attractive and would like to take her on a date. She ran into the toilet. Instead of telling him, "Oh, I'm not interested," she was texting her friend saying, "I don't know what to do." What kind of society do we want where we're going to have a bunch of women who are not able to stand up for themselves in the moment when something like that is happening? That is not the same as sexual abuse or rape or even extended sexual harassment, which is a crime. These things are not the same, and they should not be conflated as such. And what you're doing is conflating the two, and it's disgusting. It's now resulted in a policy called Listen and Believe, which has been adopted here in the UK and the US and other parts of Europe, which are now putting men in jail for false accusations and social faux pas, which completely goes against the due process that we're supposed to have in our law system.
Aisha,
it's more serious than you are making it out to be.
Can I just say that any accusations against men or women that are false are completely wrong, and they should be the person
right. So why is Barnabas letting them get away with it and giving them compensation?
Let's talk about this. We're talking about unwanted sexual contact, unwanted sexual harassment here, and you're trying to say
no. It's two things. Aisha,
not me.
Aisha, let me stop you there, because what you just said there is exactly what Natoya is trying to clear up here. Unwanted sexual advances are not the same as sexual harassment. There are two different things, Aisha. Do you accept that a man could sexually approach a woman clumsily or lacking in charm, whatever it is, but actually he's not harassing her, he's just trying to make a sexual advance towards her? Do you accept that those two things are different?
Absolutely, I accept that if it's an initial sort of come on, as we often call it, and it's rebuffed, and the man actually says, okay, you know what, that's fine, and then walks away. There's nothing wrong with trying to talk to each other and flirt and banter and have banter and so on. These are what, today's social interactions on a daily basis go by. This is what is perfectly acceptable. What isn't acceptable is what this letter is saying, that men have an inherent right to basically give in to their sexual urges, which can be wild and aggressive, and women have got no option but to shut up and put up with it. What this letter also doesn't talk about is the notion of consent. It's not just about men wanting to being allowed to give into what they want to. It's also about respecting other people who might not want to have this interaction. And we need to understand.
But this is the thing, though, Aisha. It sounds as though. Can we check Natoya's line? It sounds like there's a lot going on behind Natoya. This is the thing, Aisha, is that men are not all the same. Some men have grown up and been raised in such a way, and their life experience is such that they are quite good at reading signs from women. They get the sense when a woman's interested, they get the sense when a woman isn't, and they can kind of make judgments based on that, how far they can push it, what questions they can ask, what they can suggest. But there are men that quite simply are not as good at doing that. But these men still may have a desire to try and charm a woman or to suggest to a woman that they want to take them out for a drink. But the danger is, if we live in a society where every time a man tries to make an advance towards a woman, there is a chance that she will take a picture of him, put him on Facebook, say he's a sexual harasser and completely ruin his life, then maybe as a society we've got a bit hysterical about this problem.
I actually mentioned this backlash, that the potential backlash back in September, October, because I know that if you go down too hard one way, there is going to be blowback. But let's talk about the victims, or women and men as well, actually, who will never have an opportunity to talk to people and tell people what's happened to them. So we're talking about people who've had allegations made against them. Some have lost their jobs and so on. But majority of these cases is where there's not a sort of one-off incident. There's been a range, a sort of pattern of behaviour which has resulted in these men losing their jobs. But if
we can't have a conversation about flirtation and the sexual frisson that men and women enjoy together without saying we can't forget there are lots of victims, then we can't get anywhere. We know there are victims of sexual harassment and sexual crimes. Everyone listening to this programme agrees that rape is wrong. Everyone agrees on this programme that sexual harassment is wrong. But what we're saying is there some kind of a grey area much, much, much lower down the scale where a man might put his hand on a woman's shoulder and say, I think you're so beautiful. Can I take you for a drink? Or a man might delicately touch a lady's... Let me give you an example, Aisha. You and me, this is just a thought experiment. You and me are at a dinner party. We've been put on the same end of the table. I'm a married man. This would never happen. Are you with a partner, Aisha?
No, but go on.
Okay, well, let's forget that. I'm married. This would never happen. You and me are at the end of the table. We've been put next to each other. We're getting on really, really well. We're having a great time. We're having a laugh. It's clear that there's something there, but maybe we both want to see each other again. If I lean across and put my hand on your knee and say, Aisha, do you know what? I've had such a good evening tonight. Would you mind coming out for dinner with me? Would you find me putting my hand on your knee? Would that always be a no?
For me personally, yes, it would. But I know for other people, they've got different kinds of for them, it might not be an issue. But what we're talking about here is actually sexual harassment, and this is what we need
No,
to
the thing is, we're not, Aisha. Aisha, we're not.
The Me Too campaign.
We're not talking about the Me Too campaign. We talked about the Me Too campaign week after week last year. We talked about sexual harassment. We talked about Harvey Weinstein. We talked about all these things. We're not talking about that. Let me bring
the Me Too campaign.
Aisha.
The letter that was written yesterday was in response to the Me Too campaign.
Let me bring Natoya back into this. Aisha, Natoya, let me put. Sorry, we lost your line for a moment there. Let me put this question to you as well. You and me are at a dinner party. Complete thought experiment, speculation here. We're at a dinner party. We're on the same end of the table. We're having a great laugh. It's clear we get on quite well. I think you fancy me. I'm getting the impression that you know there's something there. I reach across, put my hand delicately on your knee, and I just say in a friendly way, "Do you know what, Natoya? It's been so nice to meet you. Would you, any chance you come out with for me with a drink? Would that be okay or always wrong?"
I think that if I was attracted to you, then that would be okay. If I wasn't attracted to you, I would probably move your hand off my knee and say, no, thank you, I'm not interested. And that would be the end of that. If you then decided to do it again, then I would probably get more assertive, because I am someone that has no problem telling a man in the moment when I think he's going too far.
Here's the thing. If you said to me...
What this is doing is telling women that they don't have to do that. They cannot take personal responsibility and empower themselves to actually become assertive with anyone. What we're doing is trying to regulate all interactions between men and women, and we're asking men to change. We're not asking women to take any responsibility for how they might perceive a situation whatsoever. And it just continues the same pattern that feminists always do. They always take away moral agency from women and propel it onto men. And then sometimes they acknowledge when a man is a victim, but usually they say it's the fault of the patriarchy, which basically says it's the fault of men.
Okay.
So it completely denied women's sexual power that women have always had over men.
Natoya, we're getting... No, it's fine. We're using a lot of big words. So let's get back to the basic example. You didn't fancy me on this occasion. You put my hand to one side. You said, please don't do that again. If I said to you, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I completely misread the situation. I'm terribly sorry. I absolutely would never dream of doing that again. Would you still go away from that dinner party thinking, oh, he was a bit of a perv?
No, I would not. Because I recognise that men have always been the approachers. And it's always been that way because women have less eggs and men have more sperm. And when you talk about biology and supply and demand, it just means that women are going to be the choosers. And they always have been, and they will always continue to be, as much as feminists like to shout and scream about it. Because if women really wanted to take on the role of approaching men, taking responsibility for this all the time, then feminists would not be telling them that they are constant victims. They would be telling them to empower themselves and take responsibility and do it. But they're not doing that. They're doing the opposite.
I thank you both. I've got to take some travel news. Thank you to Natoya Raymond from Women Against Feminism and to Aisha Ali-Khan, who writes the Women United blog. I'd love to know what you make of this. But I mean, we've been around the houses there, but this comes down to the basic principle of men approaching women that they want to go out with, potentially take for a drink, for a meal, for a dance, potentially for sex. Is it okay for men to still approach women? Do you think it's become too risky now in 2018 for men to do this because of the environment we live in, the climate we live in, where men are so quickly accused of being pervs and being harassers? How did you get with your partner? If you're a woman, did you approach him? Did he approach you? How was it done? And if you're a man, what was your approach? Have you ever come on to a woman? 03459 455 555.
Travel news for beds,